Hello, this is Retired Farm Boy Channel. My name is Jeff. I want to welcome you back to another video of mine. Now, I do want to start out and put a little disclaimer on this one that this is a video that's going to be a little different than most videos I put together. This video is going to broach one of the topics that everybody says you should not talk about openly, and that's politics. Now, I'm not going to approach it from the standpoint of trying to back one party or another. I'm going to talk about, this is my first election since I've retired, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the first part of this on how I go about making my decision and whether that has changed or not from when I was working to when I retired. I will go in and talk a little bit about the state of the two candidates that we have right now a little bit. Again, I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other. I think most people's minds are already made up anyway. And then I want to leave you at the end, and I hope you'll stay to the end, to talk about the resiliency of this country and my thoughts around how I think we're going to go forward and how we can continue to have a greatest country in the world at the end of all of this. So let's start out today and talk about, how I go about making my decision of who to vote for. Now, I will admit that I'm a very conservative person. If you've watched my channel and my videos, you know that I'm a conservative person. So that likely means that I vote Republican more than I do Democrat, and that's true. However, I do want to point out that I have went both ways. I did vote for Bill Clinton, his second term. I thought that he did a very good job with the economy and various things in his first term, enough to the point to where I thought he was worth giving us another 4 years to. So I do not go just one way. I do look at it for the most part. Every 4 years I look at it with the one question that most people probably use when they look at this as well. Am I better off now than I was 4 years ago? That's the question that I use. Now, I first heard that line, I guess you'd say, or way of thinking, when I got out of college. I got my first job, and my boss was talking about the upcoming election, and that was what he said. I vote on, am I better off now than I was 4 years ago? And that sort of stuck with me. And I know that that wasn't something new or anything on the way of thinking, but it's the first time I'd heard that. So I've sort of kept that in the back of my mind, and probably that's the way that most people look at elections when they do come around. When I was working, I was probably more concerned about housing. Was I going to be able to buy another house? Was the interest rates low enough to where I could afford to buy a house? I was like everybody else was, during their working careers. I pretty much had a mortgage, my whole time when I was working. And, so things like that were something you thought about. Gas for vehicles, which is the predominant way during my lifetime. Americans love to drive. We love to drive. We love vehicles. And so, the price of using those vehicles that we love so much, is a big deal for us. Always has been. I can remember as a teenager, now this is before I was able to vote, being in the car with my mom and dad, sitting in lines at gas stations hoping to get gas. So, those kind of things leave a mark on you. And you think about, how freely it's been to be able to buy gas. You don't have to worry about buying gas, but you do have to worry about the price of gas. So that was another thing that would always come into play. For the most part, you didn't want to be restricted on how you lived your life. In other words, I always thought that a smaller government was better. So that was another factor that you looked at. Is the government getting in the way too much? Is the government increasing taxes again? Nobody wants taxes. You know, when somebody when taxes go up, how many have ever went back down? Very rarely do taxes ever go back down. Uh, Former President Trump was one of the few that actually lowered taxes. That's not something that usually happens. So nobody ever wants to hear about taxes being raised. That's just, you know, that's something that's not going to ever go back down the other way. So those were the kind of things that you thought about when I was working. In retirement, how do I think about those things? Well, I still think that those are the bellwether things that I look at. How much is government intervening? You know, how much is gasoline? Has the price of owning a home gone outrageous? And some of these things are not so much a factor for me anymore. I never plan on having another mortgage in my life. So the housing prices to me is probably not as big a deal, or the interest rates for that matter. But the price of things going up, yeah, that's a bigger deal for me now than as big a deal for me now as it was when I was working. Gasoline is probably one that's not as big a deal for me though, because I don't drive as much. So it's not something that I pay as close attention to, the price of gas, as I used to. Now, do I still think about those things when it comes to my vote? Yes, because I have kids, I have grandkids that are be driving them someday and working someday, and I know friends. I have plenty of people that I know that are still working, plenty of people that are struggling I know that are still working and getting along, and I know right now it's very tough. And so those things are still come into play for me. I still look at it and primarily think, am I better off now than I was 4 years ago? Now, shifting over to the candidates that we have to choose from this time. Up until about a week ago, we knew exactly it was going to be a rematch from 2020, right? I really think that former President Donald Trump was a guy that I probably would not want to hang around with and would be a good friend of mine. He's too direct for me. He's too I for me. A lot of eyes coming out of his mouth. He's definitely arrogant, but I don't know that that's a bad trait when it comes to a politician. They all are. He's a little harsh for me. I think he could say things in a totally different way and win people over a lot easier. But you got to keep in mind of what this man has gone through. On the other hand, look at the hell actually that he's been put through from our media and the Democrats in general ever since and before he became president the first time, and they have continued to do the same thing even after he came out of office. And some of that he's brought on to himself by arguing with them, by fighting with them, by some of the actions that he's taken. I get all of that. But you also got to understand that that's part of what has made him have the makeup that he's had. They've come at him with things that are not true. The Russia hoax was true, was all false, proved to be false. Nobody can, I don't think anybody can actually say, and deepest in their heart, can say that the prosecutors that are coming after him are not biased, are not don't have the backing and of the DOJ and the White House to do what they're trying to do. These are cases being brought forward, and along with other people who are killing and robbing and everything else in this country, and they're not even prosecuting them. So it doesn't make any sense at all. So I understand where he's coming from, but he's also a tough guy to take. I get that. But I try to look at it from the policies. He had some really good policies when he was president, and so on. So I'll just leave it at that on that side of the fence. On the other side, until a week ago, I think President Joe Biden was going to be the nominee. He still may be. I think it's going to be hard for him to pull out. Tonight, I know he has a interview with George Stephanopoulos. He could very easily this could be the interview where he pulls out of the race, or it could be the interview for his life, future political life. Um, it's hard to defend Joe Biden, in my opinion, but more than anything, I feel bad for Joe Biden from respect of his mental capacities went down, and they keep running him out in front of people and having him do things that you wouldn't want to do that to you. You would not do that for your dad or mom. You would not run them out in front of people, acting and speaking the way that he speaks, and then say, you're free to go drive your car, mom, to get your groceries. You would not allow that. And to me, that's what the White House is allowing. They're allowing a man who doesn't have his mental capacity anymore that he once had, and he supposedly is running our country. I don't even really believe that he's running our country. But I'm more angry than I am anything. I'm angry at the White House because they're the ones that are closest to it. They're the ones that are doing the lying. They're the ones that see this and know and are making the decisions that we know that he cannot be making. I'm also very angry at the media. The media, to me, is just as two-faced as can be, the Main Street media for the most part. They've been talking about how sharp and everything that Joe Biden is, all the wonderful policies he's done, which I still, you never hear him go into specifics about it. They'll just keep saying that, and they'll talk about how bad the other side is. And then after the debate last Thursday, they now have all turned. It's almost like they didn't know what was going on. They knew what was going on, but now they're going to act like they didn't know, so that they can jump behind the next person that they hope will come along if Joe Biden drops out of the race. So it's just amazing to me that the cover-up that we've had the last election cycle, I wonder how history will treat this. I sort of think that this might go down as one of the biggest scams of all times. I'm hoping that whether President Biden steps aside and someone else comes up or not, I hope that people will be punished, so to speak, for the actions that they've done in one way or the other. The power struggle here is just clearly, off the charts, and amazing to me what people will do to go to those extents. So again, I'm not sitting here trying to bash our president. I think that the people around him are the ones that are mostly guilty here. Could Joe have probably figured out he needed to step aside? Sure. But the people around him are the ones that propped him up and have been using him basically like Weekends at Bernie movie, to keep their agenda going, because they didn't want to cause any turmoil. Well, now they've got turmoil out the butt, they somewhat will deserve what happens. They still have a good chance, in my opinion, of maybe winning this election. But hopefully the candidate that might turn up good enough to win it, surely they're not going to be the same situation that we are now. At least I hope not. That would really be a shame. So I say all this about our candidates, and I'm not a big fan of either one, as you can tell, but you got to look at the one that you think is right and has the mental capacity this time to actually pull that off and be the president that we're looking for. Democracy will hold true. I know you hear a lot of that in the media about, democracy's going to go out the window. It's a fight for democracy, a vote for democracy. Our founding fathers did a wonderful job in setting this country up politically. We've got the three-tiered system here: executive branch, the congressional branch, and the judicial branch. I think it's a great system they've set up. They've set it up to where there's a House of Representatives, a Senate, and then you've got the president, of course. That they've got it set up to where if one side gets too much power, the next election might be able to straighten it back out. And I sort of think that that's what is going to happen this time. I think things have gone a little bit too far to one extreme, And our country will come back stronger than ever from all this. We're very resilient. This country is the greatest country in the world. I still believe that. I do cringe a little bit about some of the things you hear. When you think about history, I study history a little bit, sort of a novice at history, but when you think about the great empires in the world, 200, 250 years, 300 years, that's about as long as a lot of them will, survive. And we're at, I think, 248 years now. So that concerns me a little bit, that we're getting away from things a little too far from how things have changed in my lifetime. But I also have confidence in this country again, that we will right the ship, that we will get things back on track, and that we will be okay. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know I've rambled a little bit. I hope that it didn't step on anybody's toes too much. I tried to stay away from sounding one side or the other. I think it's just a presidential election is something that we should all think about, and we need to think about it in respects of how it's going to affect not only us but our country, and how it's going to help us in the future. We all have people down the road in our families that we want to have a better opportunities than we had. So please don't be so selfish or so hard-minded one way or the other that you can't see and look at the options that are out there and try to make an assessment based on common sense and reality. So until next time, this is Jeff. What do I always say? Retirement is great. Thank you.